Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Anyone Can Create panel hosted by Broadway For All on Playbill.com. First off, land acknowledgements do not exist in a past tense or historical context. Colonialism is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on the land, and to seek to understand our place within that history. We want to thank Groundwater Arts for sharing this land acknowledgement language. I'm currently calling in from Manhattan on the Muncie Lenape land. My name is Osh Ghanimah, founder and president of Broadway For All, and I'm going to be one of your guides for tonight's conversation by giving you an inside look at Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, with some folks who helped put this together and around the democratization of theater. Not only was this project that started with a rat on TikTok a historic moment for our entertainment industry, but collectively, the production raised over $2 million to benefit the Actors Fund. You'll hear more about the incredible Actors Fund in a bit, but damn, $2 million. That is the power of social media and the generosity of our collective community. Congrats to the Ratatouille family for inspiring this huge event. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome Sadie Lee to the screen, my co-host for the evening, who will lead the first part of the panel. It's really special to have Sadie Lee here because Sadie is a Broadway For All student in our dramatic writing division. Sadie was in the summer conservatory and has continued on with us in our first ever fall conservatory, and is getting ready to share her final writing piece at the end of January. The cool thing about Sadie is she heard about Broadway For All from one of our partner programs who we love dearly, Create Her. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen and folks, Sadie Lee.
Thank you so much, Osh. Hi, everyone. I'm calling in from Brooklyn on Muncie Lenape and Canarsie land. And for those of you who don't know about Broadway For All, we are an organization that equips young artists and stakeholders with the necessary programming, community, and vision to build a more inclusive and powerful arts industry. On a personal note, I just want to acknowledge how lucky I am to be a part of this community. At a time when we're all physically distanced and dispersed, it's so valuable to me to be a part of a group of such wonderful, like-minded creators.
And when our friends and supporters at Seaview reached out to include us as the Ratatouille premier education and accessibility partner, say that 5 times fast, we jumped right in, not only because we had previously worked together on our Access for All ticketing initiative, but because this particular initiative too is exactly what we're about. And specifically this year, as we just piloted our long-awaited content creation division led by Sila Reyes. In the spirit of anyone can cook, we believe that anyone can create with a hashtag. My generation's trying to get used to the hashtag. And this virtual production is inspiring our next generation of content creators by truly democratizing the way new work is developed and shared in the American theater and beyond. And now, for our first part of tonight's panel, I'll pass the mic to Sadie, who will be moderating this first portion and who will now be introducing the creators from the Ratatouille team.
Thank you so much, Osh. So first up, we have Daniel Mertzlufft. He is a New York City-based composer and arranger whose work has been performed worldwide, including off-Broadway, at the Sydney Opera House, and recently on The Late Late Show with James Corden. His arrangement of Ode to Remy by Emily Jacobson launched the Ratatouille TikTok musical movement, and for the benefit concert, he served as music supervisor, arranger, and songwriter, including writing music for the new hit song Remember My Name, which was featured on Rolling Stone. Next up, we have Macy Schmidt. She is an orchestrator and music director based in New York City. And pre-shutdown, she was working on the Broadway production of Tina, the Tina Turner musical. She served as the orchestrator on Ratatouille and is the founder of the Broadway Sinfonietta, an all-female identifying and majority women of color orchestral collective uplifting the existence, excellence, and equity of female BIPOC musicians in the Broadway industry. Next, we have Alec Powell. A composer, arranger, and orchestrator from Salt Lake City, Utah. He has premiered works nationally as well as internationally, and Alec wrote the overture for the Ratatouille musical. And finally, we have Jess Siswick, who is a digital content specialist, graphic artist, and avid Broadway fan. She designed the key art for the Ratatouille musical. Hi, everyone. So the first question I'd like to ask you, 350,000 viewers. What does it feel like to know that 350,000 people watched this production online after it was all inspired by Emily Jacobson's initial TikTok? Anyone want to take a stab at it, maybe?
I'll go. Sure, I'll be bold. It's really bizarre. And having done the first arrangement of that song that then like started the movement, it's been really wild to just see it slowly evolve, because I did post the first thing and had no idea where it would lead. So to watch it slowly happen, and then to be in the works of all of this concert benefit, it's just been really wild. Never in my life did I think that all those people would join us. If you had asked me as I was posting that video, I would think you're crazy.
It's also wild because if you think about like really the max number of people that can see a Broadway show every night, like what's the biggest theater, like maybe 2,000 seats, and like how many shows would have had to happen for that number of people to see this that watched it all at once, I think is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think.
Oh, sorry, Jess, go ahead.
I'm so sorry, Daniel. I was just going to go over what you said. Is I could have never imagined that a file that was sitting on my computer called Remy PSD would in under a month be on a Broadway marquee and on taxis and buses and be the poster child for this incredible collaboration. I would have thought you would be crazy to tell me that would have happened.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think any of us thought that this would go near as far as it did. You know, we made these silly little 60-minute videos, and now we have this beautiful benefit concert.
That's really, really wonderful. All right, so next I think we have a few questions from our Broadway For All student artists. And first up, a question from Grace, who is in the dramatic writing division.
Hello, I'm Grace. I was wondering, how did you go about recreating the structure of Ratatouille, and did that impede anything you wanted to do creatively?
Ooh, whoa, that is an amazing. I'll happily hop onto it because I was there for a lot of these conversations. So how that worked initially was I got a call from Seaview, and they said, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this?" and brought me on as arranger and music director or music supervisor. And then I teamed up with Michael Breslin and Patrick Foley, who wrote the book and did the adaptation. And it was us three and the producers from Seaview sat on a call, and we said, okay, what are the beats that we need in this? What are the beats that we can do by dialogue? And then we knew very quickly that we would need our dear friend Remy to narrate, because it's really difficult with what we were dealing with of individual people. We don't have a set. We don't have crazy costumes. We don't have puppets for all of this. So to be able to create the scale and stuff, we knew very, very quickly that Remy was going to have to narrate. And that sort of informed the rest of it then. And we said, okay, what are the most liked videos? What videos do we have for beats that we don't have yet? And that's where Remember My Name came in, that Kate Leonard and I wrote brand new. We realized we didn't have anything for that beat. So it was interesting to try to do that. And there's a lot that we wanted to include that we couldn't, of course. There was an ominous number 7 is what Macy knows it as, which number 7 was a love song that we had hoped to get in, and just for one reason or another, things kept getting pushed back, and we decided against it. But in the numbering of our score, number 7 is missing. So we always say ominous number 7. But it was fast, so it was hard, but it sort of just laid itself out based on what had gone viral, which was quite nice for us.
I want to interject, Daniel. Like, how does it feel to essentially kill your babies? We talk to our students about that all the time, and it's always extremely tough for them. So I want you all to finish this question, but I want to interject there with that. It's something that's extremely tough to do, especially when you're younger.
Yeah, and it's really hard. Thankfully, I wasn't killing my babies because my finale was the only thing that I had written. But it was really hard in the room that we had like 40 different songs that we wanted to include. And it was really hard to figure out what we needed. And really, it just came down to story, because I believe that the number one reason to do a musical is to tell a story, right? And if the song isn't in service to the story, we don't need it. As hard as that it can be sometimes. And I tell myself when I'm writing that all the time as well. I have a couple of shows that I have a show right now that we're in talks of cutting my favorite song, which is really hard to do. And eventually, if we have to, we have to. But it never gets easier, but it's important to do.
Yeah, that can be the same way for creating art as well. I know that when I went to sit down and I wanted to brand this whole movement, this Ratatouille musical, I wanted to have something that was familiar to the movie, but also something that was completely original to the musical. So I wanted to take visuals from the movie to create something new and something that was a single image. And when you talk about kill your babies, for the longest time, the image was on a plate, because the iconic Ratatouille is served on a plate in the movie. So I wanted the stacked Ratatouille rat to be on a plate. But when I looked at it on the poster as a whole, it looked too busy. And decided to go with a fork instead. So it's sometimes having to take a look back, and in the more visual arts industry, we call it flipping horizontally, to look at it from a new, different way, and you can see all its flaws, and look at it from different eyes, and then tweak it so it can be a single image that tells the story in one image. And my main inspiration was the lyric "Remy the Ratatouille" that came up with that visual, and that's how I made that poster that was familiar to an audience that knew the movie, but also that this was something new and something exciting.
I'll go. So I wrote the overture not hearing Daniel's arrangement or anyone else's. I had just seen Anne's video and was like, oh, this is great. And then RJ's video popped up and I decided I'll duet that. And again, Daniel and Macy, you don't write an overture as the first thing that you just don't. It's one of the last things that gets created. And so my whole involvement was to trust the process. And thankfully we had amazing people. Daniel and Macy killed it. And I got to just kind of enjoy the ride.
It's funny you say that, because when I sat down to do the charts, the overture was the very first thing that I put on. Literally, because the starting point was so good. I was very conscious. I was like, wow, is this one of the first times someone has started with the overture? So that continued in the process. Well,
and Macy just reminded me of something that was it's sort of relevant, but just something funny was because of the timeline and the arrangements we were doing. I just started on whichever ones I could that we knew, okay, this beat is set, I can do it. And I knew that we had to write an I Want song at some point, and I had an idea of what that would be, but I hadn't written it yet. And I started writing the themes from these songs I hadn't written yet into other songs, knowing this piano idea is hopefully going to work, which was definitely a dangerous game, but I'm glad it worked out. But it was an interesting thing to do it so differently, because in a normal world, I would have written a song, the other songs would have been written, and then when we had dialogue, an arranger or whoever would take those themes and bring them together. And it was so backwards for the way that we had to do this project.
The second song I did after the overture was the finale. And I remember Dan saying to me, oh, this piano part there, it's actually going to be the theme from the I Want song that I haven't written yet. And there was a lot of that. I would go into a file and people would leave notes in the file that's Macy, this will eventually be the theme from number 5.
Yep.
And knowing that and not knowing what the other song was also kind of a challenge for trying to make it all cohesive and tie the themes in together. And there really wasn't time to finish all the songs and then sweep through and create motifs. So you kind of had to just create motifs on the fly. And gratefully, Dan gave me a brilliant roadmap for that. All of the notes really made that happen. But it was it was disjointed, but in an exciting way.
Yeah, it was sort of fun. It's the idea of you don't have a choice. And I think a lot of times writers, especially young writers and myself, when I have ample time, I get in my head. And with this, you just had to do it. Deadlines are the best thing to make creativity happen. You had to. We were recording with an orchestra. If you didn't finish it, you didn't like there was no other option. So
Literally.
deadline.
I wouldn't go to bed
Yeah.
at night until the song of the day was done. And like if it wasn't done, it like wouldn't get recorded. It was just retweet.
Yeah, and that's not something someone told me really young in my career was when you're working on something, book a reading, book a workshop, book a concert, and then you got to finish it.
Well, I think I should make Motifs on the Fly my new, I don't know, mantra maybe? All right, so I think we have another question now from Thea in the Content Creation Division.
Hi, my name is Thea, and I wanted to ask you if you encountered any setbacks while in production for the Ratatouille musical, and how did you overcome those setbacks if you encountered any? Thank you. Thank you.
Oh man.
Which one can you share?
Should I take this one? I don't know.
Yeah, it's yours.
I
It's
mean,
yours.
we recorded a 20-piece orchestra during a pandemic, which was like its own setback. I mean, musicians not being able to be in the same room was its own level of setback. But then also, when we talked about people recording from home, not everyone having the same quality of equipment was its own setback, because it was really important to me that players who didn't have studio level equipment not get priced out of being able to participate in this. It was also really important to me to not endanger people by bringing too many people in a room at once. So there was this fine line to be negotiated of, okay, well, these rhythm section players have quality home recording equipment. Let's have them be at home. Then, okay, we've got 15 musicians left. Let's do strings and woodwinds and reeds in these tiny chunks, strings and woodwinds and horns, like in 3 chunks throughout the day. And everyone will get COVID tested and have to submit tests and like be 6 feet apart and masks and all of these things. And it was just this like, you know, if it wasn't a pandemic, we would just book a studio, put everyone in the same room, and an orchestra would play together. They would get to play off of each other. They would get to experience dynamic changes together. And so like just the layers of separation from each other, quite literally, that COVID created in this process was like a setback from the very first phone call we ever had about it. Like the very first thing in my mind was like on the timeline of this project, if it wasn't a pandemic, it would already be ambitious. But the timeline of this project not being able to put everyone in the same room at once meant that when we did that studio day, we recorded the 11 numbers in the show 3 times in 3 chunks throughout the day, because the strings recorded every single song, and then the winds recorded every single song, and the horns recorded every single song, whereas normally we would have had to do every song once. So that was definitely like balancing inclusivity, regardless of like how fancy gear you have, with safety, with efficiency of time and money, was personally my biggest setback. And I still am like, how did we do that? But it worked out.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I'm gonna say the opposite of what I just said. Is time was the biggest detriment to this, because we were just on such a tight schedule, along with everything that COVID brought. And you know, we were on such a crazy tight schedule. None of us were able to be in the same room to talk about ideas. It was scheduling calls and when can we do this? And it's really hard to, you know, experience music over a virtual platform. We've all gotten really good at it, but it's still hard.
Yeah.
And, you know, like one of the things that Macy said that really always stressed me out was I had to do the final say of the click track for all of these. And I had to listen through on a Logic file. And if the tempo was exactly right, then that was forever. Like saying, oh, yep, here we go. And it's not like I had time to think about it. We didn't have lots of, you know, that was the hardest part of, yep, okay, that's it. And now everything, that is the Bible for everything.
I was very eager to delegate that responsibility.
All right. Well, I think this is actually very related to what you both just talked about. We have a final question, I think, from Aaron in the Content Creation Division.
During this pandemic, more and more events have been recorded and streamed rather than performed live in the musical theater industry. How can you make sure that this accessibility is maintained after the pandemic is over?
Pretty heavy question. Accessibility in theater.
I would like to take that and raise it stakes. I think what we were able to create was sort of a proof of concept of this is possible. And I really hope that moving forward, we can sort of rethink the structure that we have creating theater, specifically New York theater. It is such a difficult door to open and like barely get your way in. And this just was able to raise voices from around the world, from diverse set of voices, literally all over the world. And the idea of a crowdsourced musical, I think, is very possible. And I think building programs that, rely on sustainability, but use the ideas of what we learned is really important. And it's the same thing with accessibility, where these were $5 tickets. And you know what? When you are in a New York theater, sure, selling $5 tickets at a 100-seat theater is not going to be completely sustainable. But can we do a hybrid model? Are you able to purchase tickets online? And I think what all of us have learned, that a lot of producers tend to be afraid of, is if someone sees it online, they won't see it in person. And I actually think it's the exact opposite, where I become obsessed with things online and then I have to see it. So I hope we sort of, turn around on what we're considering that. Because I think it's the exact opposite of what a lot of people would assume.
I always say, if it's good, they'll come back, so just make sure it's great.
Exactly. Yeah. And, everyone becomes obsessed with things now before they see it. I don't know anyone who's like, I'm going to go see this show blind. No, I stalk it. I listen to all the songs. I'm so excited to go see it. It only feeds that audience.
Just to double down on that, I think this shows that being theater creators is more than living in New York City. I mean, I live in Salt Lake City and I'm a part of, this crazy national worldwide phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. But, it's not to say that you must be in this one place to create beautiful art. And I think as someone who grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, it was always the dream to move to Salt Lake, do the thing. And you can create art wherever, and that art is valid and it should be accessible no matter where you are.
Yeah, and I really think that the rise of social media has helped this so much. I would not be where I am today without social media. I think that, especially in this pandemic, we're all going through a shared experience that this art has brought people together. I think it's so important more than ever to host these talkbacks, to make the learning to pull back the curtain more and make that accessible for young people. So instead of just dreaming in their bedrooms, they can get the information, they can get the expertise that they need just by being on social media, just by turning on a computer screen. That's important more than ever. My background is in animation, and I got to be celebrated as a graphic designer for the past month. That's just something that's been incredible, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without social media, because it brings people together and it connects people. I mean, look at Daniel. He's branded today with my purple color. And that's all through connection on social media. And especially creativity in this time, it's important. Like we said, that creativity thrives in limitations. And this is a pure example of that. And I really hope that people seeing this today, seeing this accessible panel that we have right now, inspires them to get out there and make those connections and create on social media. What I loved about this project is that there was no gatekeeping. We tried to be as accessible to all people who contributed to it, whether that was having their music selected or saying, hey, we're making a playbill, we want to include your ads in it. It's been, as TikTok keeps saying, we did this. And I really believe that we did do this. It's a collective. And that's what's so important, is that people feel so connected because we've made things accessible. And I really hope going forward that it remains that way.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a better note to end this on. Thank you all so much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We continue to be so inspired by all of your work on Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, and truly thank you for keeping us creating during this unprecedented, difficult, and quite frankly, shameful moment in our country. And now we want to turn to something that's a little more positive, that is helping upend some of that shameful behavior and also this unprecedented moment that nobody could have imagined. And that's from the Actors Fund. We're going to hear from the Actors Fund chairman, Brian Stokes-Mitchell, to give us some more information about who they are and what Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, has been supporting during this production.
Hey everyone, and happy Renew Year. I'm Brian Stokes Mitchell, chairman of the Actors Fund. This pandemic has been devastating to the entertainment and performing arts community. Pre-COVID, it was already difficult for arts professionals to make ends meet. But today, there are thousands whose livelihoods from Broadway, film, television, dance, and music has simply vanished. And without work, they are in desperate need of help with emergency financial assistance for food, housing, essential medications, as well as health, life, and career support. The Actors Fund is there for them, but the need for assistance is overwhelming and only growing. There is incredible power in the digital community. That's why TikTokers like you coming together for events like Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, is so incredibly inspiring. As you know, Remy is a little rat with big dreams, but he didn't go it alone. It took collaboration to fulfill his dreams with his pal Linguini. To make a donation and show your support of those in need, visit actorsfund.org/Remy.
So before we begin our next part of this panel, I want to talk to you, Sadie Lee. Our Broadway For All application season for our summer conservatory opens up on February 1st for dramatic writing and content creation. And it will be virtual for anyone in America. So Sadie, can you talk about your experience at Broadway For All? You were with us in the summer, you joined our fall program, you continue to keep coming back. Why is that?
I mean, can I say everything? No, I'll be more specific, I promise. So like you mentioned, I heard about this program through Create Her, which is an amazing organization. And I joined this summer when I was sort of, really desperately trying to find something to do when we were all shut up inside and, really couldn't go anywhere. And I fell in love with the community, with the people. It's so amazing to be a part of a group of artists like this. I don't think I could have imagined that for myself even a year ago. Right now, I mean, there are a lot of things I couldn't have imagined, of course, but no, I mean, in times that are so hard to even process fully, it's so invaluable to have, a support system like this, because that's really what it is. It's not just a group of artists, though, of course, that is what we are. It's really about a support system that allows us to uplift each other right now.
And can you tell us about one of your favorite moments with a faculty member or another peer?
I would have to say over the summer, we would do different workshops where we would read each other's work. I don't think I can choose one specific moment, but we would read through each other's work. And I was just always so blown away by what everyone would come up with. I mean, and that's really the beauty of it. It's nothing I could have come up with, which is why it's so exciting for me to read and to be a part of and to just see, even if it's over Zoom.
Thank you so much, Sadie. And I want to remind all of our viewers during this tiny little break, while we wait for our second panel to come on in just about a minute, I want to remind us that our friends at Be an Arts Hero brought to our attention that the arts and culture sector provides $877 billion in value added to the nation's economy, employs 5.1 million arts workers, and is 4.5% of the GDP. I know Brian just shared the link where you can donate to the Actors Fund, but in case you missed it, we have included it in the description below this video. From the bottom of our hearts, we hope you can support an organization like the Actors Fund, who has helped countless artists and technicians, like some of our faculty and artists who come in and out of our doors at Broadway For All, that have helped them stay afloat amidst a difficult moment so we can continue doing the great work for New York and also for our country.
So I would once again like to encourage everyone watching, anyone in 5th through 12th grade, to apply to Broadway For All Summer Conservatory. It's a really wonderful community to be a part of.
Great. And now we're going to begin our second portion of the panel. I'd like to welcome our next group of panelists, the Amplifiers. Alex Birsh is the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of Playbill, the third generation of his family at the company. Alex oversees all digital and print initiatives for the 137-year-old business. Wow.
And we don't look a day over 136.
Not at all. What skin products are you using, Alex?
A lot of the old Olay products from the 1940s, maybe.
Next up are Greg Nobile, who is the co-founder and CEO of Seaview, and Carly Callahan, who is the managing director of Seaview, the production company behind Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, and the people who got on that phone and said yes and who always say yes. In addition to producing Ratatouille, Seaview, which develops and produces shows on Broadway, off-Broadway, and on London's West End, most recently produced Jeremy O. Harris's Slave Play, which was recently nominated for a historic 12 Tony Awards, and also the Tony-nominated Seawall, A Life, starring Jake Gyllenhaal and Tom Sturridge. And last but not least, Ellenore Scott is a New York-based choreographer and content creator. Most recently, she choreographed the off-Broadway production of Little Shop of Horrors and Ratatouille, the TikTok musical. She has worked on 4 Broadway shows as an assistant or associate choreographer and is now creating content for her following on TikTok, which is currently at 500,000 strong. Wow. To kick off this star-powered group, I'd like to know from all of you, what did you expect going into this Ratatouille, the TikTok musical process?
Ellenore, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. So I am on TikTok, and I was just so enthralled with how many people knew about that weren't on TikTok. So I was getting text message from people being like, "Have you heard of this TikTok musical?" And so I think the expectation was just greater than we could have ever expected. And the fact that I was asked to create some dance moves for this kind of first of its kind TikTok musical was super exciting and nerve-wracking, and I'm just so grateful of the reception we received.
Anybody want to add?
Carly?
Sure.
I don't know why I'm just calling on people, but I feel like I'm taking that role.
I really didn't, and I don't think we knew what to expect. When this idea started to come to fruition, it's such a rapid pace. We had set this date of January 1 at 7:00. And it was this incredibly invigorating and terrifying time because we had this date and this time, and we knew no matter what, something was going to have to happen. And to make that something give deference and really celebrate the creation that had already existed was such a privilege, but also such a responsibility. And in these pandemic times, there's no path to follow or chart to follow. You're just kind of making it up as you go along. But I feel like we intuitively knew that whatever the result was going to be joyous and beautiful and celebratory and all of the things that we all needed as individuals and felt like the community needed at large. So didn't know what to expect, but knew that it was going to be great.
And for us at Playbill, one of the apparently more transformative conversations that I've had in the last, I would say, calendar year or longer was on November 20th when my phenomenal social media director, Felicia Fitzpatrick, came to me and said, there's this kind of growing movement of people putting a whole musical together, Ratatouille, the Pixar movie. And I said, yes, I love that movie, but why are they doing that? She's like, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows why, but except they're just doing it because they can and because it's a fun thing to do and it felt needed. And I kind of want to write a story about it. And I asked her, well, what about it? What if we make a playbill for it? And she didn't even, just that one concept. And next thing you know, I then got my team together to, in record time, put together a fake playbill, but it was real. I mean, that was the thing. That's the beauty of our very old brand, that we seem to authenticate a lot of things within the theatrical space. And I understand the power of that. But when we did that, I honestly had no idea what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to get a call from some of my friends at Disney. I did not know if I was going to get a call from anybody within the Broadway. I don't know. But what I did know was that I really, really wanted to try it, because why the hell not? And next thing you know, it became our largest social media post engagement wise and view wise in our company's history. And it was one of our widest read articles that's ever been written for Playbill.com. And it was in that moment when I thought, whoa, what have we done? and I was not shocked that not long after that, I got a note from one of my good friends within this crazy industry of ours, Mr. Greg Nobile, that said, "Hey, you want to have some fun?"
This is how all good things start, or bad, for us.
Yes, we've had a few of those conversations.
I think I echo everything that everybody said, and I think what's been most surprising, which I think was, is like, we could say over and over about this project, is, as Carly said, we knew something was going to happen. We were hoping it was going to be fun and joyful. But I think what's been shocking and surprising, although it shouldn't be, right, is like how the work has been called seminal, right, and compared to, as seminal of a moment as a chorus line in Oklahoma. And it's not to say our cute little 45-minute musical is at that caliber of show. It's to say how we talk about creation of art is transforming in real time. And the fact that something that was crowdsourced, that despite this being the most collaborative art form in the world, we've never actually seen a manifested piece of crowdsourced Broadway art in this way. And it worked, and it felt cohesive. And now that it's challenging the systems in which we talk about the democratization of art and the true collaborative process in which we can undertake to make art. And that has been the ripple effect that I don't think any of us could have imagined, sort of being in the pantheon of talking about these other, seismic shifting artistic form conversations from years ago. And I think that's what's so exciting. And it's so exciting about this panel, is talking about sort of, and how do we keep running with that, which is such a needed conversation.
I'm glad you brought that up, Greg, because, as we talk about this idea of anyone can create, right? Or it's like, hey, if you have a TikTok, or if you have this, you're a creator. And a lot of times, I've heard a lot of pushback from people who will say, well, are we conflating this idea of content creators with artists? And if we're saying anyone can create, right? Like Broadway For All, for our application season last year, we said you could submit a TikTok video, and some people submitted them dancing, right, to another person dancing. And like, oh, we're gonna ask for something else because we want to see a little more like POV. But I guess like my question to all of you as a follow-up is, do you see a problem with conflating the idea of like anybody in America can open up their phone and create content, and this like problem of like conflating it with those who are saying, let's not sort of like poop on people who are trained as artists, who went to school to do all of this, who are craftspeople, right? And sort of like wanting to dichotomize these two groups. And, I look at it as artist or trained artist versus a content maker, and anyone can make content and choose a vessel. And so I'm wondering, do either of you have any thoughts on that idea?
I think that what's exciting is that this anyone can create concept is piercing through the membrane that for some is very thin and very permeable, and others is like a huge wall. And that's what stands between the moment of inspiration and then the moment of creation. And to be really engendering a spirit where that moment of inspiration can be captured and broadcast to an audience vis-a-vis a platform that allows for an instantaneous amplification of that moment of inspiration is super exciting. And then what comes of that is what it is, right? There's this incredibly democratized process of certain content being amplified organically and others not. And that is a trickier, I think, piece of it. But to be looking at not necessarily the product, but the process, and really removing any kind of barrier between this spark and then doing the thing, whatever that thing is, I think is so inspirational and so exciting to imagine how that's going to inform what we have to work with, in the days and months and years to come.
Yeah, and following up on that, just piggyback off of what Carly said, I think we are still needing to adjust to the fact that we are now privy to a lot of the developmental process of what people's ideas kind of go through. Because, I mean, concept albums have become Broadway musicals, very successful ones. And we have never seen the literal beginning stages of a concept album before in the way that we could now, by somebody experimenting a lot on TikTok, as an example, or Instagram Reels or anything like that. But we have to now get used to the fact that we're looking at a lot of unfinished products, and that's a good thing, because it allows for the overall artistic community to get a good idea, to get a good clue into what's out there, who's out there, because it doesn't matter what they look like, it doesn't matter where they're from. What matters is what they put into the work and what they put out there for all of us, the content viewing public, to see and essentially vote on with our interests and our confidence, which is certainly overwhelming. And sometimes that might hurt the developmental process, because then it may hamstring it by maybe stopping it too early, because, oh, look, I found this success with this thing and I won't stop. I won't continue to work on it. I'll now go to something completely different. So there are gives and takes on this, but I think ultimately what we'll take from this time that we're in right now and what it means for the future is that we have never seen the beginning stages of the developmental process so clearly.
For sure. Thank you for that. We have a few more questions from our students. Next up is Jacqueline.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline, and I was wondering, how can institutions that are already entrenched in systemic racism and classism do genuine work to embody the idea anyone can create?
So we've moved from the individual to institutions. Our students do not hold back. How can the institutions that are already entrenched in systemic racism and classism do genuine work to embody the idea that anybody can create?
I'm going to just say that that was such a well thought out and intense question that needs to be said and stated more and more. Recognizing that racism and classism is built into the foundation of so many different things in your daily life, including but not limited to the performing arts, musical theater as a whole. But the thing that I want to say is, especially with this idea that anyone can create, is it's a beautiful kind of ideal, right? That anyone can create, but recognizing that not everybody is given the chance and not everybody has the money to pay for singing lessons, dance lessons, acting lessons, like going to see concerts, affording a Broadway show, right? So already being able to recognize that those things are realities currently, and what are the next steps to make those things change? What is diversity or equity training that we can start to establish as a necessity for everyone to understand how we can be more equitable, to people with disabilities, with gender identity, with racism, right? And I think that that question just raises a lot more questions, but it is our job to make sure that we recognize that that is the reality first, and then begin to continue to do the work of getting better.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so smart, Eleanor, and I think there's a common refrain is, you know, the stories that we tell on Broadway are too white. And, you know, you have to, it starts with what's on stage, and then you can quickly back out of the authorship of these stories, and you look around on that glorious Playbill title page and see who's involved in making it. And you say, oh, these composers who wrote this super white story have been apprenticing as musicians for 10 years for $0 on Broadway because their family could support them while they did that. And then when it was their time to step up and write the story, they wrote the story that they know. And the story that they know is not the story of our country, and certainly not the story of our world. And then you go and you look around the table and you're like, oh, well, everybody around our marketing table is all white. Well, they were doing the same apprenticeships, and they were doing the same things working for free after they graduated from NYU. And, you know, now they're in the same place, right? And this is a systemic issue. We know this. And, you know, when we start to look at platforms like TikTok, and we start to talk about how we're completely democratizing access to the ability, not, yes, of course, the work, but also the process. And none of those collaborators, those 12 contributors who became the core of that process, Kevin Chamberlain is super famous and has 3 million followers, and his song was just as important to us as Gabby Boltz from the middle of Australia, who's, you know, like, who is like not at all in our ecosystem. And now she has this like love affair relationship with Wayne Brady, and they're like making stuff together on the internet, which Eleanor and I were talking about late last night. And so it's just like, I think when we talk about how institutions who are rooted in the systemic racism and classism, we need to be looking at technology as our friend in our ability to like make at the top of our funnel just massive for how we can find. And it's not so much about having to go down to NYU and watch that one showcase every year. It's got to be wider than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And the institutions, of course, always have the gravitational pull of the audience, right? I mean, the audience is directing what is seen and how it's seen and how it's marketed and all the rest. So if we kind of are welcoming new audiences in the digital sphere as well, that's going to force institutions to kind of rethink their own biases in terms of who the eventuality is in terms of the performance itself. So I think that it's an inside out paradigm as well, if we're looking audience first, welcoming new audiences, and then thinking about what is produced and why.
Yep, and just to continue to piggyback on all these great points, you know, one of the more astute observations anybody can make about value is who is being valued by how many dollars are behind them.
Mm.
And if there are not enough dollars behind a certain sector of people, it's evident. And whether that's dollars based off of fortune because of luck of the draw at birth, or whether it's because of they have this really beautiful skill, that they have the good fortune of having that type of capital to use to better over time. There's so many people who don't win the lottery, and you have to, and we as an industry need to really put value behind institutions that are fighting for the people who are absolutely deserving of being in this really exclusive, and it should not be exclusive, club that is the Broadway industry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I mean, and one of the main things that, you know, I'm doing pretty much everything I can on you know, within the next few months is we're working with the Black Theater Coalition with just amazing people, and we're putting on this event at the end of February trying to highlight the need for more equity and what are they doing. They're trying to increase. They're trying to increase work opportunities for Black theater professionals by at least 500% in 10 years.
Totally. And
you have to have these very specific goals in mind in order to actually reach it. You can't just say, yeah, we need to make sure that everybody has an equal seat at the table. You have to say, this is the goal. This is the way that we're going to reach that goal. And we need you to make that happen. And
Alex, I said, Alex, we're going to put you on every single panel we do because you seem to always respond in a way that is like the most perfect segue to our next question. Because with that, and I want us to continue this, Adam is going to say it better than any of us can.
Hi, my name is Adam, and my question is, as the importance of anti-racist work becomes more recognized, how can institutions in the industry that rely on public approval avoid solely performative activism?
This is a tough one here, right? Because there are a lot of younger theater companies or even not-for-profit organizations, right, that rely on certain dollars who feel like they somehow might be policed or are afraid of something not being renewed or not being able to work with others. What are your thoughts on Adam's follow-up?
I mean, I think we are still like sorting the ways in which we actually hold ourselves accountable for this work. And I think there's been so much good work, too much labor asked of those who have brought these points to light in such meaningful ways throughout this pandemic. And much of that work was accompanied by really helpful accountability check-in like parameters. And I think the rush of the world coming back, which God, we all hope is soon and inevitable, in the rush of that, it is not the responsibility of those organizations who are initially published these accountability standards and these demands and these conversation starters, which have been so resourceful for so many of us in the industry who have such massive blind spots. But it is no longer those organizations' responsibilities to continue to hold us accountable. It is our responsibility to develop our own accountability standards, to preach and yell the findings and the faults and the wins and the losses that we have in this work. And the work is messy. But like we have to be loud about the messiness that we have to go through. And because it's not always going to be easy and it's not always going to be pretty and it's not always going to be success, but we have to show each other that we're working towards it. And I don't know that we have, and certainly I'm just speaking for Seaview and sort of our own very small organization, but we haven't found the way to totally do that yet moving forward. And certainly I don't feel like our larger sort of counterparts in the institutional systems have found the way to hold ourselves properly accountable on an ongoing basis in a way that feels sustainable to manage. But it has to be, it is certainly a conversation, a daily one in our organization. It has to continue to be one, and it can't be lost in the shuffle of the return of life, which is hopefully around the corner.
Yeah. And I think that to just piggyback on that, there's the tendency to have the continuous assessment of the current condition and maybe looking a little further in the horizon. But it's also incumbent upon us to take that current condition assessment and try to understand how we can change the pipeline so that 5 years from now and 10 years from now, that condition is foreign, right? And so, we can solve and troubleshoot and address what's happening right now, but how do we plant the seeds so that these conversations are more rewarding and less just so profoundly sad in so many ways. And we have to challenge ourselves, I think, to think beyond this immediate moment and envision a future that we all want to strive to get towards.
And we have one final question from Adina.
Hey there. How do you believe art can be used to promote unity around the world, and especially within our nation, when many people online have very opposing points of view, especially in this day and age?
Really, really important one here. Again, how do we believe art can be used to promote unity around the world, especially within our nation right now? And many people, as we've been seeing in this digital world, have opposing points of view.
that's a bit tricky, but in terms of the creation of art, right, I'm always thinking about being empathetic and being able to convey real and honest emotions that will hopefully capture the audience that is watching it. But that also can go from any sort of art, from music to painting to sculpture to poetry. You're trying to have an emotional impact on someone experiencing that art form. And so, you know, the hope and the goal is that if your art comes from a very honest place, it will connect to anyone. You know, there is very troubling times currently, especially here in the US. But I think with the idea of creating art with that honesty, there is the potential to get to the center of someone else, and hopefully they'll be able to experience that and take that moment to have a new understanding or maybe see something from a different point of view. Being an artist and being a creator, that's one of the most exciting parts, is hopefully potentially getting that audience or that person that's viewing it to, you know, maybe have a new perspective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the more art that can be created that allows people to say, oh, that's me up there.
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately, I think, is what changes a lot of people's perceptions on many things, is that they get to see, if not themselves up there so literally, at least a piece of them, an emotion that they recognize, a way that they get to identify in some way, shape, or form with what they're looking at, and they're not afraid to see that, and also it doesn't make them turn away. It's incredibly complicated. It is one of the hardest things to do, is to change somebody's mind. And the less that we attempt that, I think, so specifically, I feel like it becomes a bit of a chicken or egg situation. But I do think that if there's anything that can change anybody's mind, it is art. And it is a great neighbor, a great unexpected neighbor, because I think that is ultimately what art and mind perception changing really shares, is that, you know, a lot of people in this country have never met anybody in the LGBTQ community, or they haven't realized it. And once they do, that starts to open up their mind of, oh, maybe my perception of that character is wrong. And that's, I think, where art, because art gives you neighbors, art gives you new friends, art gives you new people that you are familiar with and that you empathize with, and it creates empathy. And I think that ultimately is where art is at its best.
I think that's right. And I think I love this idea of like authenticity, right? If what you're saying is about you being your authentic self, then how could anybody fault you for that? Because all you know how to be is you, right? And your POV comes from you. I want to take this time to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and my co-moderator, Sadie Lee. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Osh. Back at you. And also sending a big virtual thank you to Seaview, Playbill.com, and the entire Ratatouille team. We are so honored to take part in this exciting moment in our industry. To learn more about Broadway For All, follow us on all channels at Broadway For All, or visit BroadwayForAll.org, and keep an eye out for the #AnyOneCanCreate Festival coming soon. Our application and audition season for our virtual summer conservatory opens on February 1st for anyone across the country in grades 5th through 12th. And finally, a big thanks to all of you for tuning in. Our digital community is keeping art alive, and we remain so inspired and empowered to keep believing that anybody can create. Until next time.
Goodbye.